Welcome to the Prado Museum. We are here again on the museum's social media programming, just a few moments before it opens to the public with our weekly session in English. As you know, this is a project supported by the nonprofit American Friends of the Prado Museum, and this is one of our projects to share much information about this great collection with you, and we do all of our projects alongside and in collaboration with our sister institution in Spain, the Fundación Amigos del Museo del Prado. So thank you to all of our supporters of both institutions. We're here this morning in the room 36 on the map when you visit the museum, and you may know that there are over 150 paintings by the artist Francisco de Goya in the Prado Museum. And this section, which is the south side of the building, is kind of a museum of Goya in itself. There's 3 floors dedicated to the paintings of Goya. And today is a really special day because it will come out on the 15th of May, 2024, and it is Madrid's Saints' Day. So if we think in the English-speaking world, we think of St. Patrick's Day. Well, in Madrid, there's Saint Isidro, and Saint Isidro was an agricultural laborer who's a saint, and he's the patron saint of Madrid as well as other cities and towns throughout Spain. There is a tradition, a long-standing tradition of popular activity, of revelry, of feasting, where the people of Madrid would head to the other side of the river to the Hermitage Church of Saint Isidro, where there is a fountain of water that is related to the saint and supposedly had curing powers. So it's very related to water, to these healing powers of this water. And what Francisco de Goya, what we have here is a beautiful image of this Saint's Day, this revelry that happens, and it is painted in 1788. Okay, so a little bit of context that this work is actually a sketch. It's an oil sketch on canvas, and it was for a project that had been commissioned to him from King Charles III of Spain to make tapestries. So this is a previous sketch that would then be made into a large cartoon, which is a tapestry design, which is the 1-to-1 scale, whereas this is the previous sketch and it's quite small. And then it would be weaved into tapestry at the Royal Tapestry Factory in Madrid. And a commission was a series, and it was dedicated to popular activity. It was a commission. This would have been 7 meters long if it had been made into a tapestry. And here, as you see, it is much, much smaller. It was a series that was dedicated to these popular events that would have decorated the granddaughter's bedrooms in the palace of El Pardo. But the timing of this is really interesting, that Goya painted this. This was his 6th series for tapestries for the royal family, for different palaces, whether El Pardo or El Escorial. And so this is the 6th commission, the 6th series. You know, the Prado is so interesting in that we have different sections of series throughout the collection, and so we see works within the context and how they speak to each other. So we have other sketches also of this series, and one large cartoon, which was the Blind Man's Bluff dance. So what Goya depicts, and we also have the historical data that we have, his letters to his friend Martín Zapater. Goya wrote many letters to his lifelong friend, and it really helps us understand a lot more about him as a person and his personality. Well, he wrote his friend Martín Zapater that he was going to paint a painting about the revelry and the socializing and the partying that happens on Saint Isidro's Day at court. And he said what he was going to paint, and he also said where he was going to paint it. And he was going to paint it from the Meadow of Saint Isidro, which is, here we see the perspective. And what he's did is that this meadow is on the other side of Madrid. We see a landscape at the top with this beautiful coloring of how everything is in kind of pink and blue atmosphere, and then how he beautifully details the real outline of Madrid. We have the Royal Palace, which would have been relatively new in 1788 when this was painted. And we see how the sun is coming from the west and hitting the west side of the Royal Palace. And if we continue along the skyline, there are many buildings that still exist today, including probably the most recognizable is Saint Francis the Great, San Francisco el Grande, with this great enormous cupola that still can be seen and still exists today. So this is a view of Madrid from the time, and Goya makes the painting in different planes. He has the landscape on the top, then the division with the river, the Manzanares River, and here the people would have come across the bridge, and this bridge is really interesting in that it's a temporary bridge. It's a floating bridge, and whereas there's the bridge that still stands today, the Segovia Bridge is here, made in stone. And you see the people coming from here. So look at amazing Goya's technique of how he can paint so many people. These are tiny, these are really tiny. And his coherent use of light, that it's always coming from the west. In every figure that's painted, the light and there's more paint on their left side as we look at the painting. No? So the light's always hitting from the same side. We come down also to the front plane of the painting, whereas he creates kind of this embankment here with almost no vegetation, and he makes this little curve, no? And he sets larger figures along the edge of the curve to kind of draw us in, to make this first layer of people that are fascinating. He draws us in through this section right here, the lowest point. This is how we enter in, and these two figures are looking out at us and kind of draw us in. And we see how beautifully dressed they are. These are people that are dressed as what we would call at the time majos, and there's a really interesting social phenomenon happening, that in many cases the noble class are dressing like the more popular class, that in Spain and Madrid are called the majos, because the old name of Madrid was Madrid, and so these would have been majos, and how they dress. And then here to the left we have, if we continue along just to see this front view of all these figures, we have these figures with the parasol, which Goya will also paint in another tapestry cartoon. These two gallant gentlemen dressed very fancy, and you kind of see the flirting, these two groups of these two women with these two men, kind of, there's a little bit of flirting tension, like they want to talk to each other. And as we continue along the embankment, we get up to this figure here, and you see how one is in the shadow and how Goya treats that in the shade and the light with the sun. And thanks to her arm, she pushes us back into seeing the middle of the painting. And as we continue on the right side on the embankment, we see these figures here. These are also dressed in the popular dress. This dress is what we call today Goyesco, because of Goya, how he painted the popular style of dressing. And then this beautiful figure of three right here with a lady with these hairnets. These were very fashionable and popular, the red jacket, and how with just a few touches of paint, we perfectly see how she's pouring wine, and the cup, just two little touches of white there. And then, so this is how Goya draws us in as the viewer, and how he would have set this up for this large tapestry, brings us into this view, and then we have a large meadow that is filled with hundreds of figures, and in all different types of revelry, dancing. The upper classes have come in their carriages. The more popular classes have walked across the bridge. They are Some are dancing, some are riding, some are showing off, some are already drunken. As we go to the left, here's a drunken figure here. You can kind of see how he looks like he's going to lose his balance. And these are images, popular images that were interesting to the time, and this would have been for the bedroom at the royal palace, of the little granddaughters. Goya's in his 40s, and he had been working at the Royal Tapestry Factory with scenes for the tapestries, what we call cartoons, for over 10 years at this time. And the timing of this is that Charles III will pass away at the end of the year, and so this painting was never made into a cartoon and then never made into a tapestry, because the new king and queen, Charles IV and Maria Luisa, they named Goya court painter, and he would pass and be basically ascended, given a promotion. He would move from the Royal Tapestry Factory to painting their portraits, which was a much more prestigious position, painting their portraits. And they also were interested in other palaces, whereas this was going to be for El Pardo. Another interesting idea that the director of the restoration lab has told us about is that this painting is in superb condition. It is absolutely original. There's no retouching of any other painter. It has no section that's lost of paint. We can see how this kind of impressionistic landscape here, how the wind is moving the trees, how very liquid Goya used his paintbrush to make the wind in the trees. And that it's one of these beautiful paintings that we could stand here and look at all of the figures, all of the activity, all of the popular activity. And well, we chose this painting for a very special day, as today is also the Saints' Day again in Madrid, and there will be many people also going back out to this meadow of Saint Isidro, and will be dancing and revelry and eating food and possibly drinking wine or beer. Anyway, so this is still in practice today, and thank you very much for being with us. You can see it in room 36, and so much more work of Goya here at the Prado Museum. So we'll see you again next week. Thank you.